Not a zombie because I wash my hands every 30 seconds, Justin.
Almost having zero life changes in my daily routine ish.
We just entered level 94 on
Geek K.O. This episode of Geek K.O. is not brought to you by sleeves. You can cough in them, sneeze in them, and even use them to wipe your hands. They even help muffle sounds to avoid people freaking out. And if you're feeling extra frisky, thicker sleeves to help keep the warmness in and the bite marks out. Sleeves.
You're listening to Geek K.O, your geek trivia podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, under the handle of GKO Podcast. Hey, listener. Hey, Ish.
Hey.
It might sound a little different for our listeners today. If you guys don't know what's going on, or if you guys were listening to this in the future when everything is so much safer and so much cleaner.
Desolated.
We are isolated right now. We are actually recording this off of online, like off of Google Hangouts right now. Or I guess it's called Google Meet. I don't know. I think it's called Google Meet.
Yeah.
I don't want any nerds to come at me and go, actually. But how are you doing over where you are, Ish?
Doing all right. Playing video games. How about you?
Good. I'm just trying to keep busy, making a lot of food.
Yeah. Surprisingly, there's a lot of people in my house who are all perfectly fine.
Oh, right. I mean, how close is this to your actual lifestyle?
Aside from not going to work, like almost exactly the same.
I suppose. I mean, I'm okay inside, but then once in a while I need to get outside once in a while. But before we have our End Boss enter, how good of an idea was it to watch Quarantine when we're in quarantine? Was this a good idea? Because honestly, this was actually the most scared I've gotten in a while.
I thought it was perfect because there's so many instances of people freaking out for dumb reasons. It's like, hey, maybe we should just learn to chill every once in a while.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. But you know what? The good thing about the End Boss store is that it actually there's one every room. So I'm just gonna go ahead and open up this End Boss store, and behind the End Boss store,
keep the screen closed.
We have the co-host of Scream 101, as well as the producer of Attack of the Queerwolf, Mr. Brennan Klein. What's up, Brennan?
Hello. Hey. Thank you for having me back from at least 6 feet away.
Yeah, no, a little bit. I mean, we're kind of at least arm's length away if your arm is 6 feet. But how have you been, man?
Sure.
How's isolation been for you?
It's been okay. I mean, obviously everything is weird and haunted right now. But yeah, honestly, when I have a day off, I do tend to spend it in my apartment. So I just try to pretend it's one of those every day and not a whole bunch stacked up all at once.
Well, I'm glad you're safe and everything and healthy.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it's been a while since we've seen you. I don't remember, honestly, the last episode we had you on, but I mean, I know that when we wanted to have our normal episode, it was kind of a last minute booking that we got you, and you've been doing a lot of podcasting lately, which I'm sure you'll go over in a bit. But as far as we're concerned, we haven't seen you in a while. We just wanted to make sure that you're good, and we wanted to check in on you.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sure you had the idea to do quarantine because that's fun. And you're like, who is someone who knows enough about dumb horror franchises that we can call?
Well, you were immediately the first person that came to mind. But you know, we're going to see how well we did by jumping into
round 1.
All right, so before we jump into our first round, Brennan, what are the 3 movies that you had us assign?
Yes, technically there are 6 movies in this franchise, but I just picked 3. Because we're kind of on theme with quarantine, so we're doing the American Quarantine from 2008, Quarantine Terminal, which is a sequel to that, and then also Rec, which is the Spanish film that Quarantine is a remake of.
Nice. All right, so hit us with your first question.
All right, starting with Rec, with the original Where It Belongs. What is the name of the TV show that they're filming when everything kind of goes down? In Spanish or in English, that's fine. I think that was Ish first.
I think it was like While You Sleep.
Yeah, I'll take it. It's
All right.
While You're Asleep.
While You're Asleep. Okay.
That's a little
Mientras
bit of a
usted duerme.
creepy TV show. Although I'm sure that those kind of TV shows exist anyway. I would be interested in watching those.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like a puff piece kind of thing.
Right.
Until it's not. Okay. What city does Rec take place in? It's Ish again.
Barcelona.
That is Barcelona.
Are you sure not
Congratulations.
Barcelona?
Barcelona.
Barcelona.
Okay. Oh, and okay. Question number 3. What is the surname of the demon child in the attic?
Oh, actually, I don't know why I buzzed in because I don't know. I'm gonna call her Diabla because
That's a good name, but it's not her name.
okay.
I'll
You
guess...
like how I added like the little like gender marker
Accent
at
mark?
the end?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very accurate.
Thank you.
For
I'll
sure, 100%.
Diablex.
Servente.
Sorry, what Ish?
Servente.
No, her name was La Niña Medieros.
Damn.
Oh, por supuesto.
I
Yeah.
have it open on another tab, and I'm like holding myself, like, don't slide over, don't slide over, don't cheat.
Well, congratulations on not cheating because you did get it wrong. So we'll move
Yeah.
on. Okay, so what is the name of the dog in both Rec and Quarantine? It's the same name. Oh, that was Justin.
Yes. Okay. He was named Max.
He was named Max.
Maximilian Peg.
I think like him and was it Angela like were the only two that were like the same names?
As far as I remember, from my
Yeah.
studies.
Maybe the cameraman the same name?
No,
No,
was
we'll
Pablo.
get to that later. Hold on.
Oh.
No, we'll get to that later.
Okay. Oh, ooh. Spoilers.
So in the 2008 quarantine, they do see a bit of a news report. What lie does the police chief tell to the news? Justin.
That they were that the building was evacuated.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, in the American remake Quarantine, the man who owns the attic apartment, where is he from? Justin.
I want to say Boston.
He is from Boston.
Hey.
Oh, nice. Boston.
Okay, so we're moving on to Quarantine 2, Terminal. The movie begins with a flight that is grounded in an unnamed location. Where is the flight departing from and heading to? I'll take, if you can only get one, that's fine. Justin?
Departing from LA, and it was going to Kansas City.
It was
Atlanta.
not going to Kansas. Yeah, okay, I'll give you each a point.
Where was it?
Yeah.
Atlanta.
Oh, who said Kansas City? Oh, maybe it was a layover.
Maybe. I don't specifically remember. Okay, next question. There is a CDC officer in the movie who reveals he's not actually from the CDC. What organization is he from? Ish.
Department of Homeland Security.
Yes, he is.
Oh, I thought there was this long name to it too.
He did, but that was like a division of
Oh,
Homeland Security.
okay. Oh, bureaucracy.
Huh. And yeah, in Quarantine 2, what animal is responsible for the outbreak on the plane? I think that was Justin.
That would be a rat.
It would be a rat.
Yeah.
And okay, so final question. What happens when Henry takes the experimental antidote in Quarantine 2? Ish?
It doesn't work and it becomes more rat-like.
Yeah, he sure does.
Really? Okay,
Yeah.
no. I know that happened. I thought it reminded me of like Resident Evil. It was like, did he just turn into like Nemesis or something?
Yeah.
Basically. It's pretty weird.
All right, after round 1, what was our scores so far, Brennan?
You're actually completely tied at 5 and 5.
All right. Well, we got a couple more rounds to go to find out who would break this tie. But before we do that, welcome back to the show, Brennan.
Thank you.
So, do you remember the last time we recorded like with you?
Was it Child's Play?
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Sounds right.
That was like almost like a year ago, huh?
Was it? I don't Was it? I don't know.
What did we do for Halloween?
I really lost track of time.
I
We did
know.
we did zombies for Halloween, right? Was
Oh, we
that this
did.
year?
Oh, this is kind of appropriate, kind of jumping into this. But before we go
Yeah.
into that, I know we haven't had you in a while. We might have some, new listeners. Hopefully, I know that we just got on Pandora, so hello, new
Oh,
Pandora listeners. So
Open
for
your
those who do
box.
not know, what can you let us know what is Scream 101 as well as Attack of the Queerwolf?
sure. Those are both podcasts that I produce and host. Scream 101. We're changing up the format right now, and I'm not sure exactly where we're landing because we were gonna start doing more like movies in theaters, and that's not really an option right now. So I'm not sure what we're gonna be covering necessarily, but the theme of it is that I'm a huge horror nerd and my co-host is not, and we kind of review horror movies from those two different perspectives.
Mhm.
And then Attack of the Queer Wolf is now on the Fangoria podcast network. We are an LGBTQ perspective on horror films,
Okay.
and yeah, that's kind of the gist of that. It's really really fun and very dirty.
What was the last film that you did already?
The most recent episode we did Little Shop of Horrors, but before that
Ooh.
was the Slumber Party Massacre.
Two very, very different, right? Kind
Both
of.
different, both great.
All right, cool. So what are your geek disciplines other than being a really big horror fan?
God. Well, I have relearned recently that I'm very into the original 151 Pokemon because I've been playing Let's Go Pikachu on the Switch and it's
Oh,
really
very
taking me
Ooh,
back.
nice.
very nice.
Are
Um,
we friends on the Switch? We need to
no,
we need to
I
add
don't.
each other because I just got
Yeah,
Animal
sure.
Crossing and that is kind of taking up a lot of my time right now.
Mhm.
I feel like this is the best time to ask that question of what you're a nerd in, because you just like look around your room. It's like, okay,
Oh,
what
Oh
do
yeah,
I
right.
honestly,
got?
that's what I'm doing because I am so bad at this question usually.
Oh, I see a
Um,
Pikachu back there.
there
Yeah,
is a Pikachu back there. I call him Ugly Chew.
Kleenex.
Ugly
Um, yeah.
Kleenex.
Well, because it's this really it's basically like a crappy claw machine Pikachu toy, and it looks so strange, and I love it.
Okay, I was gonna say like it looks off, but I don't know if
Yeah,
that's just because I'm looking at it weird.
no, it is kind of off-brand. I also like the Muppets for anyone asking. This is him.
Ooh.
If you had to give a elevator pitch for the quarantine, either like series or like even if you want to just do it on the first film, because the first film kind of is a good moniker how the rest of the film goes, rest of the series goes. What would you do? How would you
Sure.
describe the films?
Well, especially in the Spanish franchise, it's about being in very tight spaces with a bunch of like 28 days later style rage zombies who want to eat you. um, but yeah, the Wreck and Quarantine, they're both, I mean, Quarantine's pretty much a shot for shot remake.
Okay.
They're both about a film or like a television news crew who's just following like a fire. They're on a ride along with some firefighters, and they get a medical call from this apartment building, which turns out to be the zombie virus, and they get quarantined inside and have to try and find a way to survive. And it's all presented found footage through the cameraman's recording.
Right. What was your first time you watched Quarantine? And from what I understand, this is your favorite horror film, right?
Wreck is my favorite horror
Oh,
film.
okay. Okay.
Uh, it's a very important distinction. Um,
I'm sure we'll jump into that, but what was your first experience with these films, at least with
uh,
Wreck or Quarantine?
yeah, I was in high school. The first one I watched was actually Quarantine 2 Terminal. um, I don't know. It was like a late night pizza party with a friend of mine who I watch horror movies with, and it was on Netflix, and we watched it, and we are like, "That's actually for like a crappy direct-to-video sequel is actually like kind of spooky and pretty good."
Hmm.
And then we skipped all the way back to the original Wreck, and that just like completely shattered us. It's such a visceral, horrifying experience, and I do
Uh-huh.
apologize, Justin. This is absolutely the hardest film I've put you through, and I admire
Yes.
your strength.
I want to talk about that a little bit, but how about you, Ish? Did you have any experience with these films beforehand?
So no, all I knew was that there was a movie called Quarantine,
You
and
were
I
the one
thought
that
there
actually
was a sequel.
suggested these,
Yeah,
huh?
so I'm like, oh, we should do the quarantine movies. And then so when you gave us the list, I'm like, Wreck? What's Wreck? And I'm like, oh, I see.
Surprise.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and oh man, I really like that. I want to watch the rest of the Rec films now. It
Yeah,
was just
most of
oh, good.
that franchise is pretty solid.
Yeah, it was just hard. It was kind of hard to get through it because like when I was watching it, the subtitles were off, like
Oh
by
no.
a noticeable amount. So I'm like, okay, at some point they're gonna say this, so it helped me like
Oh,
focus my Spanish a little bit more. But like
okay.
it was still really good overall. Like I really enjoyed it.
Were you watching it on Amazon or something?
No, I was watching it on I don't remember where, but
Fair enough.
yeah, it gave me like the option to like help format the subtitles, but like I couldn't get it properly, so I'm like,
Oh,
whatever, I'm
that's
just gonna watch
annoying. I'm
it.
sorry.
I
No,
know
it
for
was still really enjoyable.
Yeah, I
Good.
mean, I know for me, I mean, I was kind of the same way as Ish. I knew that there were films called Quarantine. However, I did not know that. I mean, I should have, but I did not know it was like a zombie film either.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
that was interesting. That like, I mean, I should have known, but like I could have like for some reason I was just thinking, oh, maybe these are just diseases and they're just gonna drop dead. No, they like you said, they turn into freaking 28 days later zombies. But it's crazy. But um, I mentioned a little bit before, but this was like the scariest film I watched in a while. And I know I came into this podcast saying, hey, I'm a fraidy cat. But then because we had Brennan on many, many times and he's kind of gave us a ton of horror films, I'm actually
Mhm.
okay with horror films nowadays. But then this is like the scariest thing I've ever watched lately, at least.
Well, yeah, no, I would agree with that. Wreck is I would qualify as the scariest movie I've ever seen. Like there's
That's
a
saying
couple
something for
others.
you.
Yeah. Like there's a couple others that would be in that conversation, but I think Wreck would win out for me personally.
And what do you think about it is makes it so effective?
Well, it's partially the claustrophobia of,
Hmm.
if this horrifying infected thing comes into contact with you, um, you are going to die, basically. And so, that's basically a target run now. So we know how that feels.
I went
Um,
on one of those today.
yeah, it's not fun. I did too. It's horrible. I hate it.
No.
Um, but yeah, so it's partially the claustrophobia of it, and also I am like a huge germaphobe, hypochondriac kind of person. So any kind of disease based horror really gets under my skin.
Uh-huh.
Ah,
And the well, Rec takes a little bit to heat up because they're kind of setting up the kind of verite, like reality of it.
Hmm.
But once it starts hitting, it's just like smashing you in the nerves with the sledgehammer, like nonstop for 60 minutes, and then it is over.
Oh God.
that's one thing I really liked about it was even though it took a while to set up, the setup was still really interesting. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to learn about firefighters and what they're doing.
I actually did learn about firefighters.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, when I was watching, it was just like like now that you bring that up, I think I did. I'm not a someone that gets claustrophobia, but I did get claustrophobic just being in close quarters with like, which is like people that are constant like like the people that are getting infected are literally less than 6 feet away from you. So
Yep.
it's just crazy, especially what's going on right now, and I'm sure we'll talk about it a little bit later. But what's going on right now, how we're all self isolating, um, it's it's crazy to know that like I know that these films are very extreme examples of this, but it can
Hmm.
technically happen to the people that you're with right now. You're basically living in a petri dish if someone gets infected.
Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible. It's the worst.
How about you, Ish? What did you like? What were you thinking while you were watching this film and when everything was playing out?
I'm like, man, so many people I feel like are doing the wrong things.
Explain.
Like just like like police protocols and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know how or why some people would do this. Like even if like the CDC or something came in, like they're like yelling at everyone. I'm like, you're not gonna remain calm. And when they know like that there's like a virus and stuff, getting everyone together in a small group, I'm like, that sounds like the worst. You should fortify the room so you have a defense. And then like later on, and stuff like that, like when they like know like more of like specifically more in quarantine, like when they know like oh yeah bites and stuff, and like they know what people look like when they're infected and how they act, and
Mhm.
then they still like will turn their backs to people who are infected, like with like the little girl, it's like okay, just hold on and like put their hand out, like turn away, and then she attacks. It's like yeah, I don't know what you're expecting. Her eyes are beet red and she's drooling everywhere.
Or there is that man in Wreck who kind of backs up against the bathroom where they're holding one of the infected people.
Right. Oh,
Oh yeah.
what an idiot. So like you mentioned it before, but like Rec and Quarantine, which is the American version of Rec, are pretty much a shot by shot remake. Like to
Yep.
the fact where I probably could have like, I mean, I was actually guessing what's gonna go next, and like even like, there's even like lines and even gestures that were exactly the same
Oh
too.
yeah.
Um, so like I mean, like me personally, and we'll I want to know what you guys feel about this, but like me personally, I mean, it wasn't bad. However, because Rec was already made, like I don't think they needed it. What do you guys think?
Well, I do think Quarantine is by existing a crime against art. um because it is a dilution of a movie that is like pure adrenaline and such a like crystalline perfect thing.
Uh-huh.
And then by kind of expanding it by 10 minutes and making it all American and kind of changing the lead character in small but vital ways, I was like, oh, this is not for me at all.
Mhm.
And it does disappoint me that that movie is the one that's going to expose most people to this franchise. And then when they see Wreck, they're going to be like, oh, I know all this already. And then it's not going to have that potency.
Right.
Mm.
And I'm not anti-remake in general. It's just this one I find to be a particularly poisonous one.
Oh.
But
See,
as a movie, it's totally fine. But in
Okay.
concept, I find it reprehensible.
Right.
Oh, okay. Because it was funny because I did watch Rec first, but I really did like what they did in Quarantine was like at the end when she gets like taken, they do that twice. So it's like
Mm.
because you're expecting it, and then she gets taken, and then gets back, and then it's like then the final one that's actually more like the first one. Especially since
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure that was in the trailers for the movie too, her
Yep,
getting
and
dragged
on the
away.
poster.
And on the poster. And then for Quarantine 2 Terminal, I felt it was just like, oh, it's like Quarantine 1, but in an airplane, but it's not found footage. Or like, airport terminal, I
Oh
guess.
yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely, kind of a lazy direct-to-video knockoff,
Hmm.
but kind of the way that the zombies move, the kind of like snaky acrobatic movements they have, I really, really liked in that movie.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
I did notice that too, like how they moved a lot more supernaturally versus in the original one, even in the original in the Quarantine, they just ran.
hmm Which
Mhm.
is funny because I thought that would belong more in Rec because Rec plays more off the idea of demon possession,
Mhm.
at least originally and stuff. Whereas
Right.
this one is like simply super rabies.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk a little bit more about it. Which one is the favorite out of the films? I mean, I'm pretty sure it sounds like we're kind of going toward Rec anyway, but also like the sequels for Rec and as well as like the differences and everything. But before we do that, we're gonna jump back into.
Round two.
All right, so Brennan, what do you got for us for round two?
This round is actually based on something that we kind of just briefly talked about, but it is because Quarantine is so specifically almost shot for shot a remake of Rec. Um, my next chain of questioning is going to be about the very slight differences between them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to tell you something that happens in one of the movies, and you have to say if it happened in Rec or in Quarantine.
Okay.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So which of the movies has a supernatural angle to the infection? That was it. She got this.
Rec.
Yes, it does.
It is funny
Okay.
because like it jumped out like in the it just kind of almost came out of nowhere too. Which is...
Yeah, it's very Spanish Catholic towards the end.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that, but yeah, you're right.
And we'll talk more about like as the franchise progresses when we get there. But
It was
it's
like
interesting.
it was like a much better version of the Nun.
Yeah, yes, much better. Okay. There's a little girl in both movies, but in only one of them is her name Jennifer. Which movie is that? Ish.
Wreck.
Yes, that is Wreck. Uh,
Jennifer.
all right. Number 3. Which film is longer?
Ooh.
Ish.
Quarantine.
Yes, it is.
I remember because you said something about extending it 10 minutes.
Yeah, I forgot. I shouldn't have spoiled my own question.
You know what? It was probably because they added a couple more neighbors, right?
Yeah, and they kind of tried to add like that kind of flirty sexual tension with the lead
Right, I
character
remember
too.
that.
Mhm.
I knew it because like when I was watching it, I was like, oh, you know this is American because they immediately added the flirty kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're like, we don't need this. Okay, which movie had 2 directors?
Oh,
Justin.
I believe that was Wreck.
It was.
Yes.
Ooh.
Which of the movies has a kill involving a video camera, like using the camera to kill? Ish.
Quarantine.
That was Quarantine. Another Americanized, like, let's have
Yeah.
fun with this.
Okay, so Justin, you're heavily in the film industry.
Mm-hmm.
How many people would attack that often with a camera?
Not very. Nope. They would put the camera down.
Yeah, like
Yep.
maybe the first hit, but I feel like after that initial like knockback, they would do something.
I mean,
especially when or at least when they hit the ground, they would start using their feet.
I was frankly surprised that camera didn't break after that. And they were able to like not shatter or anything. Honestly, now that you bring it up, I almost forget too that like Quarantine was actually still like, you know, found footage only because like it wasn't as because Rex felt a little bit more raw versus like
Yes.
Yeah.
Quarantine is slick.
Yeah, it was HD. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. Okay. In which of the movies does Max the dog actually come back to kill someone?
Oh.
Ish.
Quarantine.
Oh,
Yep.
in the elevator.
In the elevator, yeah.
Yeah. Did he come? Wait, at what point did he come back? Because he went to the vet, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
At least if I recall properly, and I believe I do.
That seems like it would be Max, or at least a random dog.
Or yeah, it may be not Max. There is a dog though.
Yeah, there were like several dogs.
There's a dog in both movies, but you only see the dog in one of them.
Yeah, right. That was almost something that was an error in the movies. It's like they traced the dog back to his apartment, but at that time the dog was apparently at the vet. So
yeah, it's dumb.
Yeah.
Okay, in which of the movies was the demon monster in the attic a male creature? Justin.
That would be Quarantine.
That was Quarantine.
Yeah, both very freaky. I don't think it would have mattered if it was a woman or it was both super creepy.
Oh yeah, no, they're and you know we'll get to that in one sec actually.
Oh okay.
But the names of the cameramen are different in both movies. I want you to provide both names if you can, but I'll give you 1 point per name. Justin.
In Wreck, he was Pablo.
He was Pablo.
And in Quarantine, I want to say his name was it Sergio?
It was not.
Oh, I feel like it's something with the letter S.
Was Quarantine Sam?
No. It is. Ooh. You're on the right track. It was Scott.
Scott.
Oh,
something
okay.
not Spanish. That's what it was.
Yeah. Okay, and this one is probably the hardest one, so we'll see how it goes. I wanted to see if you could name either actor who plays the monster at the end of the movie.
Oh.
Because they're both like prolific monster actors that you've almost definitely seen before.
Yeah. Oh man.
Can we get like?
I was looking at the Google, like, I won't recognize it. I can't remember the names because
I'll give you a hint for Quarantine because you're not gonna get Wreck probably. But the Quarantine one, it's the same guy who played the fish monster in The Shape of Water.
Oh.
He works with Guillermo del Toro all the time. He played the Faun in Pan's Labyrinth and Abe
Mm.
Sapien in Hellboy.
You know, you would think that would
Right.
know that.
Here's my hands. I'm not scrolling.
I think I'm gonna.
Justin?
Let's just go with uh, uh, Dean Kane.
No, I'm sorry.
I,
Ish?
I will say for Rec, Victor Chavez.
No, the good Spanish name.
Yeah.
Okay, so in quarantine, that was Doug Jones.
Doug
Oh,
Jones.
Yeah,
okay.
who also played the Bye Bye Man. He
Mhm.
played the zombie
Bye-bye.
character in Hocus Pocus. He's
Oh,
been around
really?
forever.
He played
Yeah,
Billy.
yeah.
I like how I know that.
No, Doug Jones is great. And then the actor in the Spanish Rec is Javier Botet. Um,
Javier.
yeah, he played the demon in Insidious 4. He was a lot of the
Ooh.
monsters in the new It movies.
Oh, okay.
Like he's like the leper character who's chasing after the hypochondriac kid. Um, yeah, they're both really really talented monster actors.
I apologize to those very respected crew members.
Yeah, no worries. I have one last question.
All right, cool.
Okay.
And this is just a like whoever gets closest to this number will win this one.
Okay.
Ooh.
So Quarantine did make more in box office than Rec did because it played domestically.
Mhm.
How much more did it make than Rec in American US dollars?
Ooh.
Justin.
God, I'm bad with numbers. Remember the last time we played this game? No,
Oh yeah. Just as long whoever is closer wins. So
Okay.
some increment of millions.
Okay, I'm gonna say.
I know how much Quarantine made. I just don't know what Rec made.
I'm gonna just say like 2 million more.
All right, what do you think, Ish?
All right, see. Quarantine, I believe, made like 42.3 or 43.2 million. And
Wow.
so I'm going to say 15 million.
Okay, 15 million versus you said 2
I said
million?
2.
Oh, Ish is just barely closer. It was
Oh.
9 million.
Oh,
Ooh.
nice.
As I had to do some quick math on that one.
I'm glad
Quick
that you got
mops.
this because you actually remembered at least one of the figures.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Yeah, they had a budget of 12 million.
Yeah, it didn't
Yeah.
seem that much to produce other than I don't know, maybe some of the stunts and stuff. Which I guess is
Yeah, just
more typical for like these found footage films ish, right?
yeah.
That's what I would expect. Yeah.
And they did hire more like name brand actors. Like you got a Jay Hernandez, Jonathan Sheck, and Jennifer Carpenter. Like B or
Right.
C level name brand, but still people that someone has heard of.
I recognize
Yeah.
Jennifer Carpenter, but that's about it. So after round 2, we're gonna get our sponsor break, and then Brendan will tell us our scores.
Perfect.
So, this episode of Geek K.O. is not brought to you by Night Vision. In the middle of a viral outbreak in your apartment building and or airport hangar isn't scary enough? Try Night Vision. In green or black and white, it's sure to give you the added fright.
Brendan, what are our scores after round 2?
All right. Justin, you have inched ahead at 8, and Ish has bounded ahead at 11.
Oh boy. Okay.
Ooh.
Well, we still got our last round. But
Yeah.
so I'm pretty sure that Rec is all of our favorites right now, right?
Is for sure mine.
Ish.
I like it a little bit more than Quarantine, but I
Okay.
do like a lot of things in Quarantine. Sorry, Brennan. But
What are some of the things?
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you liked about Quarantine?
One thing, like the last scene, I felt a lot more uneasy because Jennifer Carpenter's acting, like she was constantly like heavy breathing,
She
and
was
like
freaking out a lot.
yeah, that made me more anxious. I'm like, calm down, and it put.
So you
it
were
put me
anxious
more
that she
on
would
edge.
expose herself by being too loud?
Yeah, or yeah, so, yeah. Like her character just like made me like, oh my gosh, calm down. But like all in all, like I really loved like Rec, and like I said, I do want to watch the other ones. But yeah, I feel like her character more kind of helped like put me like in the mood, especially with like the close quarters and just like it just made me more anxious. But in Rec, I did love the attic scene with the camera up above turning, like, even though, like, I was kind of expecting it, it still made me jump a bit.
Oh yeah, the kid up in the attic who knocks the camera back down, right?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's ugh.
Yeah.
So the differences, similarities. I mean, I know that there are a few added things in the quarantine films versus like the Spanish ones. I know that earlier, Brendan, that you mentioned in Rec, they kind of added like the whole Spanish Catholic supernatural thing.
Yes.
Whereas in the quarantine, they actually added the fact that, oh, this is sort of like rabies, I guess. I don't know how I felt about that. I mean, I thought it was just like, oh, I probably could have done without it, but like, I don't know. It's a fine explanation, I guess.
The
And
rabies one or the other
the
one?
rabies one.
Okay.
But then versus the one in Rec, I was like, wow, this movie really turned.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But like, this is probably has to do with. I know you want to talk about it, Brendan, but I know this has to do with the sequels that Rec had, and Rec came out with three sequels: Rec 2, Rec 3 Genesis, and Rec 4 Apocalypse. You want to
Yes.
go a little bit into what those were about?
Sure. Rec 2 picks up literally seconds after the first one.
Uh huh.
It's
Yeah.
basically like a SWAT team that has been sent to kind of figure out what's to contain what's going on in there. So it's, it's expanded characters. There's also like a group of teenagers who have like snuck in through the sewer. It's a whole thing. But the movie it enjoys a reputation like as a very solid sequel, which it does deserve. Like it continues to be scary. It's the exact same apartment complex. It's still like really intense. There's just more camera angles because all the like SWAT team have little cameras mounted
Oh,
on
so
them, so
are
you
all
can kind of
these
Oh,
see.
okay.
sequels all found footage stuff?
No.
Oh, okay.
Um, Rec 2 is completely found footage, and that definitely leans in on the kind of Catholic demon angle, which makes me like it less.
Okay.
Just because I like infected rage zombie movie,
Uh huh.
like weird. There is like an exorcist scene in Rec 2, and it's good,
Uh
but
huh.
it doesn't really work for me. I don't come from that like heavily Catholic cultural background, so it's not really what I was looking for.
Right. Right. Okay.
Rec 3 starts as found footage for about 8 minutes, but then it drops the conceit because it has the camera get broken, and that's kind of them saying like, "Oh, we're graduating into something else now."
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
that one is a prequel, but not really like an origin story. It just takes place slightly earlier. It's about an outbreak at a wedding, and it's very much more of a horror comedy, which really struck me weird the first time I watched
Horror
it.
comedy.
Yeah, it's not the same kind of raw, visceral intensity as the first two.
Uh huh.
So I really didn't like it the first and only time I watched it, but I have a feeling that if I rewatched it now, knowing what I was in for, I would like it quite a bit.
Hmm.
And
And then
was that Genesis? That was Genesis, right?
that was Genesis,
Uh
yeah.
huh.
And then Rec 4 Apocalypse, it's not great. Um, it does bring back Manuela Velasco, who's the star of the first one, and I really, really love her.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just, regular non-found footage movie. It's set on this like aircraft carrier. And it's pretty unremarkable. It's fine.
Uh huh. Okay, and then
Hmm.
I don't believe I saw anything about Quarantine getting another sequel. Did you guys see anything about that? I mean, I know they kind
Mm-mm.
of set up for another sequel where like at the end, like the infected rat just ended up in like Las Vegas, where I guess they land.
I guess. Yeah, you finally
Yeah.
find out. And that would be a very fun movie to see, but I don't think that's happening.
Yeah.
Because then
I
after
can't.
that, it would just feel like it's gonna be like 28 days later or something like that,
Yeah.
or like any
Pretty
other
I
much.
can't
zombie
wait
movie.
like 10 to 20 years now when they make found footage documentaries of this quarantine
Oh
right
God.
now.
Oh,
I
that'd
could
be
do
pretty
without
Those
that.
movies would be great.
So like, what do you think? Like, I mean, how is this like relating to current events? Obviously, again, if you're listening to this in the future where everything's fine and well, I don't know if this is like some like
Time capsule.
time capsule listening to this. Right now we're isolating in our houses only because COVID-19 is going on, and the CDC or like the WHO made this a pandemic, and then we're trying to uh, prevent any more infections right now by staying at home unless you're like an essential worker. Do you guys feel any like watching these movies? Do you feel that there's anything similar uh, that kind of made this watching experience a little bit more real?
Mm,
Um,
personally, no.
yeah, this situation is heightened enough and like horrified enough that it does feel separate,
Hmm.
and it's not in the way of like the movie Contagion, which is very specifically about like a respiratory disease from China, and that's not something I would want to watch right now.
Ooh,
Oh.
Um,
ooh,
but yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
because that kind of that sorry, that movie was like skyrocketing on the iTunes charts because everyone's like, "We're learning about diseases," and I'm like, I couldn't do that to myself.
You're not learning about diseases.
Yeah,
I'm
that
quite
movie
certain.
yeah, that movie freaked me out 4 years ago when I watched it.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, so Wreck, there's enough of a veneer of fiction to it, and it's
Hmm.
so
Mhm.
extreme.
Right.
It's so unreal. Like you obviously
Yeah,
you believe it because of the movie, but it doesn't really connect to like where we are right now.
yeah.
Hmm.
And
Um,
also with the movie, it's like you're in a very confined space where people that you know have it, and you can't even go. You can't even go back to. You can't go back to your house. You're all stuck in one
mhm,
area, and you know that the disease will make you super violent and stuff. Whereas now it's like, if you get it, you have a pretty good chance of survival, especially if you're young
Hmm.
and stuff like
mhm.
that. So it's yeah,
Yeah, the
I don't really feel connected.
the Wreck
I just thought
virus
it was a
is
fun idea.
100%.
Yeah, that's
um,
gonna get you.
Although that is
but yeah,
like
I mean,
interesting, like things like containment and everything, like how originally if you're trying to contain a virus, you do need to actually quarantine everyone. So that's kind of similar.
Hmm.
The fact that like in quarantine 2, where like that dude was like after getting all the blood all over him, he's all like wiping it on his face. Is like, yeah, you're gonna get
uh,
infected, dude. That's wash your hands for at least 30 seconds before touching your face.
yeah,
They
But
didn't have
then
any sinks. They were in a weird area.
but like I think what was also striking too is that they started blaming the immigrants, which was especially in Rec, where the immigrants were like Chinese, and this is back in like 2007 when this was released. This is like
mhm.
super like, oh man, this is kind of almost parallel to like what's going on now. There's a lot of unfortunately, there's like a lot of racism happening because of it, and then they just go straight to the immigrants.
Oh yeah, that's a super astute observation. I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, obviously it's horrible.
Yeah.
Um, but another interesting thing about the movie, which like English speakers wouldn't get, but that character who's like especially racist towards the Chinese couple,
Hmm.
he has a non Spain accent for Spanish. I believe it's
Oh.
Argentinian.
Oh,
Hmm.
interesting.
Um, but it's that he is also an immigrant. Um,
Hmm.
but because he's like more Spanish than Asian immigrants, he's still blaming them.
That's crazy. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a pretty good factoid right there.
and that's one thing I feel like that's like very common in any kind of situation like this. It's and they're kind of doing it with a lot of different things. Like whenever people are scared, they just blame whatever they can.
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
like in Quarantine 2, they like they were like yelling at the flight attendants, like you like what makes you think she herself is locking you all in a spot with her after getting thrown up on?
Oh, that was the grossest thing in that film too. Just like all the throw up. I was like, I can't watch this.
Yeah.
What other like type of like pandemic-ish movies would you recommend? I mean, I know that you mentioned Contagion, but like, what other films kind of similar to this would you recommend our horror fans to watch?
Ooh. I
Hmm.
mean, look, if you can stomach it, which I would not recommend, Contagion is a really good movie. It
Mm,
is also nerve shattering. It's not a horror movie, but it's a thriller. And if you're, I don't know, yeah, I'm not recommending it for now. But if you find yourself in a space in the future where you're like, I can handle this, it is a good movie.
okay.
Um, I mean, obviously, there's Outbreak, from the '90s.
Hmm.
Um, That's the one with the virus that comes from the monkey, and it's like a
Oh,
small
right.
town in America.
Right.
Um, Other virus movies. I mean, it's mostly zombie movies otherwise, which we've
Right. No,
kind of
that's
covered.
true. Are
Yeah.
there any like movies out there that don't turn you into zombies? They just you just die violently or something like that. Not, I don't know. It has to be violent, but
Um, I mean, I feel like most like virus or plague movies are kind of like The Stand, like Stephen King's The Stand, where it's like the virus is a plot element, but it's
hmm.
only to introduce the fact that like a lot of the people in the world are dead, and now we're gonna look at what happened to the survivors.
Okay,
Mm.
interesting.
And there's not a lot that's about like being in it necessarily.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, dude, like these films, like I said, I can honestly say that like at least for like Rec, like these films like put me on edge throughout the whole time, like to the fact where, you know, I would even have to take off my headphones and read it because
Ugh.
I was like I couldn't even handle the tension. Just like it's just I'm gonna be thinking about this for a little while. But like I do want to quickly bring up too, going circling back to the point where it's like, why would you remake this? It's kind of like happening right, like it's kind of a debate right now too, with like stuff like Parasite, which we recently did our Oscars
Mm.
episode.
Yes, that was fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. But yeah, like I know that immediately after it won an award, you would hear rumors about like an American remake done by like HBO or something like that. It's like, no, this already exists. Don't mess with it already. It's already good. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I don't know what you guys feel about that. I mean, I know that you mentioned earlier that you're not really against remakes per se, Brendan, but I mean, what would you have to say about that?
Well, look, I try not to prejudge a film like if it is a remake of something foreign, because sometimes like they can bring their own spin to it and they can do something interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And the the sad fact of it is that most American people aren't that exposed to foreign films.
Right.
So if they do really like the American film and find out that it's a remake, they might actually seek out that other film. And normally that is a good thing. It's just in this case, I care so deeply about Rec that I don't want the experience ruined by how closely it hews to
Right.
Quarantine.
That's a fair enough
Because
point.
Quarantine does everything that Rec does, but just slightly worse.
That's a fair point. I mean, I'm definitely glad I watched the original first and then went into the American ones because I know what they were aiming for, I guess.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Brendan, what do you have coming up on your docket, like as far as your podcast, or what other podcasts have you been, been on? And just to give
Mm.
our listeners some frame of reference, we're recording this on the Thursday before this episode actually comes out, so this is a really fast turnaround for us. Usually we do like two
Oh yeah.
weeks. So this is going to be super current if you're listening to this on the next day. But Brendan, what do you have coming up for you?
Sure. Well, the next episode of Queerwolf, either next or one after next, our schedule's a little weird. But we're actually going to be covering cruising, which is kind of like the granddaddy of problematic gay horror films.
Oh.
It is a like gay slasher movie set in the leather bars of New York in 1980. It is directed by the director of The Exorcist, and I think it's really interesting. Well, for about 2/3 of the movie, it's very good, and then the third act is kind of dull, but it's a really fascinating movie. It's about Al Pacino kind of trying to catch a killer in these like S&M leather bars, and he's going undercover, and he's kind of losing his mind. So there's a lot of gay panic stuff going on, but the gay characters themselves are, I feel, presented pretty well. Like they're actually given
Uh-huh.
autonomy and personalities, and it's a very surprising film for 1980. It was interesting.
Okay. And do you have any writings going on right now? I know you also have a website, right?
I do. You can find my blog at jiffypopculture.blogspot.com, or you can just find my links on Twitter at It's Raining Brens. But yeah, I'm writing a little less on that just because I've been focusing on podcasting. But yeah, on that blog, I am reviewing every slasher movie that came out in the 1980s.
Nice.
Um,
Wow.
I've reached 1982 at this point.
Nice.
Oh.
Wow.
I'm also reviewing all the films that were adapted from Jane Austen books. So, I've got layers.
Mm.
Oh, and why don't you list off all the podcasts have you been on recently, or what are you going to be
Uh,
on soon?
yeah. Shortly I'm going to be appearing on. It's called "What's Your Fave Bad Movie." We're going to be talking about The Greatest Showman.
Mm-hmm.
What did I just record? I just don't even know anymore. Oh yeah. I'm going to be on an episode of the slasher podcast Keep Screaming, which that's going to come out probably a month and a half from now, but that's about the 1982 movie Alone in the Dark, which is about like 4 escaped psychopaths stalking their doctor.
Uh-huh.
That's it for now of like things that I know for sure are happening.
All right, cool. Well, hopefully we can look out for those and listen to those. But great. And then we're gonna jump into.
Final round.
All right. So before we begin our final round, Brendan, can you read us off our scores?
Yeah, for sure. Justin has 8 and Ish has 11.
Perfect. All right. So because I had the least number, I'm going to go ahead and go first. So what kind of group? And so this is in a quarantine too.
Okay.
What kind of group canceled their flight last minute, leaving the plane almost completely empty?
Oh,
Oh wow, I don't remember that.
that's so detailed. Was it like a bachelorette party or something?
No, it was a church group.
Oh, okay. Good on them. God was
I
watching
know.
over them.
Yeah.
God told
Wait,
them.
remind me. Do you get 2 points for this or just 1?
Let's go with 2. It's really up to you,
Okay.
but
I'll do
Let's
2
go
because
because Justin's losing.
yeah, exactly. Like if you got 1 point, you could only tie with Ish.
All right, Ish, go ahead.
Okay. In quarantine, what were the firemen playing inside the fire department?
Oh, was it like Jaya Lai or something?
It was handball.
Oh, okay. Jaya Lai is the one with the little scoop things.
Oh, okay. I'm
Oh,
not
yeah.
sure exactly what Shalai is, but yeah, it was just handball. They're just smacking it.
All right,
I know
you
what you were
win this
talking about. I didn't know
time.
that had. I didn't know what that name was. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wait, can you say that
I
again?
hope. Well, oh, I hope I pronounced it right. But to my knowledge, it is Jaya Lai, like
Xiaolai.
J A I space A L A I.
That's a good name for it. Like
I've seen it. It looks pretty
considering
fun, but I heard
considering
it's
what it
super
looks
dangerous.
like.
Yeah.
All right. So in both Rec and Quarantine, what does Angela play with the firefighters?
What does she play with? Oh. Okay, full disclosure, I'm gonna be super bad at this round because this has been a really quick turnaround episode, so I didn't have time to watch the movies. Um, God, is it checkers?
No, they play basketball.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was actually the reason for my question because in rec they play basketball inside, but
Uh-huh.
in quarantine they play basketball
Oh,
outside.
okay. Yes, I know.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, I lose.
So now that we got
Next
all the sports
question.
questions done, all right,
Yeah.
Ish, go ahead.
Also an arena that I do not pay attention to in films.
All right, so at the end of quarantine 2, where is it revealed that they landed?
Just outside of Las Vegas.
Correct.
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the very end, you see the Luxor and the Mandalay Bay.
God,
All
I mean,
right.
yeah, that would be such a good sequel. But if you're making a direct-to-video part 3, you're not going to get a Vegas budget.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and like plus even like like I said, I feel like it wouldn't even be like the quarantine because it would since it's such a big
Oh yeah, it'd be
population.
spread way too.
Yeah, it
You'd have
wouldn't
to
Yeah.
be like the
quarantine the whole
same like
city.
small little unless like the rat specifically went to this really small, I don't know, motel or whatever, but whatever.
Yeah, it kind of loses the claustrophobia of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, my last question to you is according to the estimates given by both Angelas, how many minutes difference can the Spanish firefighters get changed in their uniforms versus the American firefighters?
Oh. 2?
Close. 1.
Oh,
In
okay, great.
Spanish. I mean, the Spanish firefighters apparently can get changed in 3 minutes, whereas The American ones can get changed in one.
Oh, good for them. They're just showing off.
I know.
They
America.
have the boots and the pants at the bottom of the poles, so when they slide
Yeah.
down there.
All right, Ish, go ahead.
All right, in Rec and I believe also Quarantine, what sickness does the daughter allegedly have?
Bronchitis.
It was tonsillitis.
Oh, okay. Same
Yeah.
diff. You get the points.
I'm like, I don't know. I'm
One
not
of those
a nurse,
itises.
a doctor. I don't know.
All right, that was our
bronchitis affects the bronchial tubes. Tonsillitis affects the tonsils.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
You
More you know.
apparently need to be a vet for that, I guess, because everyone's a vet in these movies. All right, so Brennan, what are our final scores?
Oh, tragically, the tonsillitis question put Ish in the lead. Yeah, Ish has 15 and Justin has 14, but you both did very well.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Congratulations,
You're welcome.
Ish.
These are good movies. I like.
Yeah, no, seriously. I mean, I know that we asked you to come on for the quarantine films, but like, I honestly want, like, for some reason, I still want to thank you because, like, these,
Yeah.
like, I'm glad that this is your favorite film, or like, you know, Rec was your favorite film, and I'm glad you're able to come on and help us end boss this one because these have been, even though I've been like super scared and like I'm probably gonna be thinking about this for a little bit. Like these are super enjoyable films, and I would recommend it to anyone who would like to get a great fright out of these.
Yeah, I hope I didn't kind of wreck you too. As a pun not intended. I hope it didn't ruin you too much because I know you can be like more affected by horror films than me.
Right.
And I'm profoundly affected by Rec. So best wishes to you.
Well, it's funny because after I watched all the films, I had to watch the new season of Nailed It because it was kind of like what do you call it? A palate cleanser after that. So yeah. Well, Brendan, thank you again for coming on, especially super last minute. We always enjoy having you on. If anyone wants to get a hold of you or like, you know, do all the things now, all the pluggy plugs.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter at It's Raining Brens. You can find my shows on Twitter at Scream101pod and Queerwolf Pod. That's all one word. You can find me on Instagram at The Burning Clem. And because there is such a quick turnaround on this episode, the day that this episode airs, I will be in the middle of this like March/April Madness bracket I'm doing to decide the best Lady Gaga song of all time. So if you want to vote in that,
very cool.
You can look on my Instagram stories.
I will vote Disco Stick. Is that a thing? I don't know.
That's in Love Game. Like that's a lyric of Love Game.
Oh, okay. I know that one.
My favorite's Just Dance.
Oh, that one's a good one. Like,
yeah, I'm curious to see who wins because you know people are voting, so it just depends on what the public says.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, Brendan. I'm sure we'll see you soon. Our turnaround time from when we saw you was way too long, so hopefully we'll get you back on.
Yeah.
I'm always happy to come on.
It was zombies, though. I double checked.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, perfect.
Yeah,
it's more zombies. All right, and you're listening.
I've done so many of these; they blend together.
I know.
Yeah, I don't even know who we had 2 episodes ago. So.
Right.
Fair enough.
All right, and you're listening to Geek K.O, your Geek Trivia podcast. Check out other levels of Geek K.O on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify, or anywhere. I mean, we're on a lot of things now, so just search us wherever you listen to your podcast. And make sure to rate, comment, and subscribe if you have not done so already. Also follow us on Facebook and Instagram under the handle GKO Podcast. And if you want to email us, we are at host@gkopodcast.com. And you can find us on our home on the web at gkopodcast.com. We're typically recorded at Wayland Productions, although we are currently inside our house under quarantine right now. But Wayland Productions is an award-winning production company for short films, documentaries, and audio dramas. Please check them out at wayland.ws and support the audio-visual arts. Special thanks goes out again to Brennan Klein, our producer Hannah Meraz, our composer of our theme song Marley Rosner. On Twitter and Instagram, I'm at Jostin at JAAHSTEN.
I am Joke Necromancer.
And our next episode is on
Tiger King.
And until next time, we'll see you on
Geek K.O.